Shalom and welcome to Challenging Torah. Welcome back. I appreciated the break and I'm glad that you're here with me today as we start a new book, the final book of the 5 books of Moses, Devarim or Deuteronomy. Devarim means words. These are the words. Words are how we create our world. Words are what separates us from animals. We communicate through words for good and for bad. Gossip can destroy a community, but gossip can also let us know, uh-oh, there's a fire down the road. It's words that we use to create the entire structure of our lives. Moses begins in Exodus saying, I'm not a man of words. And then in Devarim, he is going to go on and on and on in a fairly grouchy mood as he begins his final sermon to the gathered Israelites before entering the Promised Land. Ele hadvarim, these are the words, it starts, which Moses spoke to all Israel on this side of the Jordan, in the wilderness, in the Arava, opposite the Red Sea, between Paran and Tophel, and Lavan, and Hatzerot, and Di Zahav. First of all, this is all of Israel. Everybody is gathered there. Most of these people, he's going to be telling them a history, a story of their ancestors, and blaming them for many of the things that their fathers did. Because as he begins to tell these words, you realize he's not just telling a story. This is rebuke. This is tochacha. This is what we call admonition is the big word. These are not friendly words. Oh, our eyes glaze over. He's going to give us a list of place names. Every one of those place names is connected to something not so great that happened on the journey. Di Zahav, code word, golden calf, Zahav. The place where he hit the rock. The place where they argued at Paran. And they have a history of knowing, but he's making sure the younger generation knows, don't mess up. And then he says, there are 11 days' journey from Horeb by the way of Mount Seir to Kadesh Barnea. Sounds pretty innocent, except that he's reminding them, and then we'll tell the story, that they could have been there in an 11-day trip. But because of the incident of the spies and the fact that they didn't believe, it was a 38-year journey. And Moses will begin again to say all of the negative things that happened on this trip. Imagine the rabbi retires, and as she stands there at the farewell dinner and says, thank you very much, but now let me tell you what's really wrong with this synagogue. And she goes through all the mismanagement, all the lost members, all the unreturned phone calls, all the kids who never really learned their bar mitzvah portion and were doing it by heart. And you go, oh my God, this is the goodbye of the rabbi? That's kind of what Moses is doing. And it's a difficult Torah portion for that reason. This is tochacha, criticism. And in the book of Proverbs it says, he who criticizes a man, in the end will find more favor than he who flatters him. In other words, people need to have a certain amount of criticism. But then Proverbs also says, do not criticize the fool, for he will hate you. Correct the wise man, and he will love you. But it's difficult to know when you're making your moment of criticism who you're actually speaking to. In the Talmud, Rabbi Tarfon says, I wonder if there's anyone who exists in this generation who knows how to accept rebuke. And the rabbis discuss it and decide best just to keep your mouth shut. Nobody really wants to hear it. But this is a very special moment in Jewish time. We are in the 3 weeks, and now we're actually within those 9 days of approaching Tisha B'Av. And in that period of time is the time that we level self-criticism. And we hear the criticisms of our actions in the hope that we will begin to turn. And so on the actual day of Tisha B'Av, and we will be reading it the day before, please join us on Saturday, we read Echa, which means, how could it be? Lamentations, written by Jeremiah. And I quote, "How lonely sits the city that was full of people. She has become like a widow. She that was great among nations and a princess among the provinces has become a vassal. She weeps bitterly in the night, and her tears are on her cheeks. Among all her lovers she has none to comfort her. All her friends have dealt treacherously with her. They are become her enemies." Wow. No wonder we're always feeling like we're in an existential crisis. Have Israel become isolated again? We face a BDS movement and think the world is really against us. And Echa asks us to turn and look at our own actions as well. The Haftorah that matches this portion, the portion that is always read before Tisha B'Av, on the Shabbat before Tisha B'Av. The Haftorah is the beginning of Isaiah, and I'm going to read the first lines to you because they're so beautiful and really an essence of how we begin to approach the high holiday period. "Hear, O heavens, and give ear. Earth, for the Lord has spoken. I have reared and brought up children, and they have rebelled against me. The ox knows his owner, the ass his master's crib. But Israel does not know. My people do not consider. Ah, sinful nation, a nation laden with iniquity, a seed of evildoers, children who are corrupters. They have forsaken the Lord and have provoked the Holy One of Israel to anger. They have turned backwards." Isaiah cries out, "To what purpose," God says, "is the multitude of your sacrifices to me? I am sated with burnt offerings of rams and the fat of fed beasts. Your new moons and appointed feasts I cannot abide. Who asked that of you?" And then, in the words of Isaiah, God says, "What do I want from you? Learn to do good, devote yourself to justice, relieve the oppressed, uphold the rights of orphans, plead for the widow." It's the moment that we ask, so how are we doing? How are we doing? And before we turn, that it's not just a superficial ritual of the high holiday, we have this moment, culminating in Tisha B'Av this weekend, that says, where are we not providing justice? Where do we need to help the oppressed? Where do we need to change our ways? It's time. See you on the weekend. Join us for a reading of Echa on Saturday morning. Shabbat Shalom.